Hi, and welcome to Total Recall. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And check out the comics I'm working on now at Patreon. Go to patreon.com and search Tom Scioli, and follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
So we're talking about Masters of the Universe, the new Netflix animated series.
Yeah. Really excited about it. Didn't realize, it kind of snuck up on me. It came out of nowhere. I didn't have any idea this was happening.
Okay. I mean, I'd heard about it, like all this stuff. I'm just kind of like half tuned in on, it just like all this stuff happens so fast. Like the Thundercats reboot. I think there's been like 2 Thundercats reboots that have like come and gone, and like I haven't had a chance to check out either of them. You know?
Me neither.
So it's like there's all this stuff, and then there was that Masters of the Universe series that came out in like the early 2000s, and I watched I saw like a little of it, but I haven't like fully checked it out.
I missed that one too. Like, the last one we had watched was the old one from the 80s.
The 80s, yeah.
And I missed the one from the early 2000s, and then this one, it was like Kevin Smith.
Yeah, Kevin Smith was involved. Like he's I don't know. It's called Masters of the Universe Revelations, and it's Kevin Smith is I don't know, the showrunner or what. But I'd heard about this sort of being in the works for a while before his name was added to it. So I don't I just don't know how deep his involvement is. If it's one of those things where they get somebody to try to save something at the last minute, or if it's almost oh, we need a name. We need a name attached to this, which is pretty smart.
Oh yeah,
Kevin Smith's name kind of got my attention.
Me too. Before I watched it, I looked at the IMDb page, and I was like, this might have one of the best casts of of anything that came out in the last couple years. Going down the line, it's they resurrected Laurence Olivier for Goon number 4. I'm it's man, you got Sarah Michelle Gellar, you got Tony Todd as Scareglow, you got Dennis Haysbert, it's Dietrich Bader.
Yeah, Mark Hamill as Skeletor.
Perfect casting. What? And reunited with Kevin Conroy from they're having a little Batman the Animated Series reunion.
Yeah, and Skeletor, when you think about it, he's not too far removed from the Joker. In terms of voice, Skeletor was always kind of camp, I guess is how they describe him.
When I found out that he played the Joker on Batman the Animated Series, I'm still reeling from the shock.
Oh, really?
When I was little, when I found out Mark Hamill was the voice of the Joker, I haven't recovered from that, the shock of that. I was like, you gotta be kidding me! This was Luke Skywalker all along.
Yeah.
He-Man, delicious.
it's almost like a shame in the Star Wars new trilogy they didn't have an evil Luke, or have Luke turn evil and then he puts on now it's what would it,
your ass is my Lord Solo.
Wait till they get a load of me, that sort of thing. But yeah, this series, did you check out She-Ra at all? The new She-Ra?
I haven't watched that.
Okay,
because
that was I like that a lot, and they kind of just reinvented the whole look and the whole concept. Pretty much from the ground up. I mean, it's they have all the different characters, but it was pretty thoroughly reinvented. This was interesting, and so I imagined this was going to have sort of a similar approach, a similar just kind of rethinking the whole concept from start to finish and making it into this organic whole or whatever. But it looked like they opted for something different with this, where it was surprisingly true to the original source material. It was I mean, it's been a while since I really watched some old He-Man cartoons. I have recently checked out the first episode, just to kind of refresh myself a little bit. But it's been a while since I like went deep with it. But it's like just from my recollection of it, it feels like they're picking up on like, like I said, like where it left off, kind of like almost like this could be like, the next season, the never before seen, next season.
It was also surprisingly dark too.
I think that's kind of necessary. Like it's not as dark. It's not as dark as I like. Like I think Masters of the Universe fans, myself included, want like a dark Masters of the Universe. Like that, and because I don't think like kids are into this stuff.
No,
like kids aren't looking for this.
They were like dropping some innuendos in there. I think at one point Tila was like, "No glove, no love," and I was like, "Wait, did I just?"
Yeah, like we're not they're not looking to get like a new audience. Like the way that like He-Man was marketed to kids back then, it's just like it's not done anymore. Like it was very like as much as we love it and stuff, it was like very cynically marketed, and it's just like. It's so violent, and like
Skeletor stabbing Prince Adam like through the back.
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh, cool!" But we want to take it like it needs to go further in that. Like,
yeah, like I mean, just I don't like the look. It's kind of interesting because obviously they changed the designs and the animation. It feels kind of like a fusing of. Like the old 80s show and the early 2000s one. Like they're kind of gathering up like little, aesthetic threads. And but it doesn't, and it feels a little more like, I don't know, like, not manga. It feels a little more like anime. It feels a little more like it's like a little more sophisticated, but not, not too far removed. Mm-hmm. The, like the Thundercats and the She-Ra were like just completely different styles from what the previous thing was, and kind of going for like a different note, where this kind of is like like a it's just like aging up the sort of 80s approach, just aging it up a little bit.
Also like Prince Adam in the old like the figures, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger's playing He-Man.
Right.
And he's like, "I'm Prince Adam. I'm ripping out of my turtleneck here, and now I'm He-Man."
Yeah, they didn't have like a good contrast. Like it's like at least Clark Kent had a pair of glasses. There was really like a Billy Batson and Shazam kind of thing. Because that's like kind of what what the I have the power kind of thing is supposed to be. But like exactly, like the exact same guy basically.
And you got Henry Rollins as Triclops. I was wondering why he kept blabbering about having a TV party.
And they're kind of like, it's a ton of fan service. So it's like,
oh my god,
it's like, okay, here's this vehicle that never showed up in the cartoon. Here it's finally, and then we're gonna have a bunch of Bashasauruses. And
in episode 5. They pull out the Masters of the Universe canon movie little platters they fly on.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Remember these?" And he's like, "How could I forget?" And I'm like, Me as well. How could I forget those?
Yeah, very, very, and even like when they go to Pre-Eternia, which I don't think like Pre-Eternia ever made it onto the cartoon. Like I know some of the comics that came with the toys talked about Pre-Eternia, but I don't know that it ever made it to the cartoon. Like I don't remember. Like I don't remember the last days of the cartoon. But it is like all this like lore that you've kind of like learned about Masters of the Universe like since like the internet. It was kind of like the Masters of the Universe was like pre-internet, and then it's like internet comes along, and then now you can find out about all the like unmade figures, and stuff, which is like some of the earliest stuff I did with the internet was kind of finding out like
Same here. Like I'm always like, did I hallucinate that toy line or like
Hero and all the like dinosaurs, and like that He-Man was going to go like back to like prehistoric Eternia, and there was going to be like Keldor or Eldor or and there was like that wizard and stuff, and it's like they've made like figures of that since, and they made them in the early 2000s, but then like more recently they made ones like to kind of look like using some of those like unmade characters, and then they had like the Eternia playset.
Oh my gosh.
Incorporated into the show. So again, it's like all
great. I was waiting for someone on a tram to come like sliding by.
Oh, the other thing was like in Pre-Eternia they had a character who was kind of like he was the original model, like the sort of like mock-up prototype He-Man that they made. That you'll see in like the documentaries about the making of the He-Man line. It was kind of like the original He-Man that never. But he looks a lot like Conan, and his arms go together like this. I don't know if you've seen the toy, but he was like one of the characters in this. So again, it's like it's all this, like I said, fan service. But yeah, like the thing of like picking up on old plot threads. Like I remember. It's almost like whether it was Kevin Smith or somebody there, it's kind of like, okay, what's our angle? How do we come into this? And so it was kind of like you watch the old shows and then you realize like, okay, he's secretly, Prince Adam is secretly He-Man, but like pretty much everybody knows.
I know,
except Teela. like Orko knew, Man at Arms knew. So they came up with this idea of like, something bad happens, He-Man dies, and Prince Adam dies, and then and so Teela like finds out that He-Man and Prince Adam are the same guy, but then she finds out that everybody else knew already. So then she's just like kind of
double bird to everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I thought that was like a pretty good sort of way in, and just a way to kind of kick the story off. But again, doesn't reinvent things. Like I expected more of a reinvention, especially for something that's like kind of disappeared a long time. Like, I think the early 2000s series is further back in time than the original 80s series was when that came out,
Yeah. Tom, I know you were vibing on Stinkor.
Stinkor, yeah.
He got a lot of action in this one.
Yeah, Stinkor. That's like, so like watching this, I can, like, I've always sort of had my own ideas of like what I would do if I was working on like He-Man, and I, and that is kind of a thought like you have is like, how much do I reinvent? How much do I, go? And so this went, like I felt like they found a good balance. Like it's not how I would have approached it, but I get it. Like it's a smart way to do it. Like these old episodes aren't super out of reach, so it's you can kind of like play off of them.
The writers were watching Total Recall show. I think Mossman Breath mentions he's pine scented.
Yeah.
We know the writers were big Total Recall heads.
Yeah, they watched our He-Man episode before before they really got to work on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, like there were references to like the Canon films movie, so it's like, it is kind of smart to kind of hit as many notes as you can and kind of fuse all that stuff together.
And yeah, for the younger, there's some like 8-year-old kid. He's like, all right, the Canon film. That's from Dolph Lundgren's He-Man.
Well, yeah, like I loved the like when I was a kid, my thing with He-Man, like I remember the time before the He-Man show. Like there were like a couple years where it was just the toys and the little booklets they came with, and then the show came on. And like when I saw the show, I felt like so betrayed by the show, because like the tone of like the little booklets they came with, the little mini comics and the toys and even the commercials, it was like kind of more of like a Conan, Frank Frazetta, kind of thing. And then the TV show, like even as a kid, it seemed so like aimed at kids. So like it just was, it was never like, I never fully warmed to the show. But again, it's like the show is a fact, it's a thing, and it was a hit, and kids loved it, and maybe I didn't love it, and maybe there's some other people who grew up with the show who didn't love it either, They're
like, how dare you?
Yeah, but it's there, so it's like, I think it was smart to kind of like treat that as, you know, somewhat like the canon, and then just build like don't. Oh, and then another like thing, like they kept hinting. Maybe it was one episode, maybe it was a couple episodes, but I remember them like hinting in the old show that like the sorceress is Tila's mother, you know, and in this they kind of continue with that. They kind of, you know,
like Man at Arms, he's rocking a man bun. He was like teaching yoga and then like working at the hip new coffee shop.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely looks the part. They were just like building the character like around the mustache.
I know, it's great. You don't have to.
You know, it is true though. Like, it's like, what's under that helmet? Why not a man bun? Like they were probably like, you know, what's it called? Spitballing ideas, and they were kind of like, okay, he takes off the helmet. What do we see? Like,
it's like
you
a
know,
big
he's got a mohawk. Yeah.
The mohawk.
Like, it's like they're trying. Then how about a man bun? You can, like, write it on the whiteboard. Man bun.
Man bun. He's got a reverse mohawk.
That I have the power. Like, it is like that, you know, by the power of Greyskull, I have the power. Like it is like, you know, they like my personal preference would be for He-Man not to have like a Prince Adam secret identity or what. Like I feel it's unnecessary, but it works. Like you know, kids buy into that of saying like I have the power. It was a workshop concept.
I was all in on that. Like anything like transforming someone, I'm like,
yeah,
it's so great.
Yeah, and you can like reenact it with the sword. And like He-Man is like absent, which again is like an interesting move, but kind of a smart move. Like when I was working on Transformers versus G.I. Joe, like I was kind of like, you know, when Optimus Prime shows up, it's like everybody else kind of like gets pushed to the background. You just want to see what Optimus Prime is up to. Like he kind of sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Like and because he's like so awesome, like people are just like into. And I withheld him kind of like for as long as I could in the series, just to kind of like build up the rest of the cast and kind of, you know, create you know, just to kind of create a little bit of a vacuum there to let sort of other things fill it in. But like eventually, you know, people want to see Optimus Prime, so he has to show up, and so he does. And it's kind of like that with He-Man. It's like you take He-Man out of the equation, and it is kind of interesting letting like the supporting cast get to the forefront. But again, like people want to see He-Man, so they figured out a way to keep him in the series, even though he's not in the series. Like it's kind of like each episode sort of starts with like a flashback to some old adventure they had with He-Man.
I'm like, no Skeletor, no He-Man. I'm like, I was boycotting this.
You were ready to walk.
I was ready to walk. I'm like, Prince Adam is He-Man. How dare you not tell me? Fuck everyone. You got Orko vibing.
Yeah, do you know who the voice was of Orko?
I think it's Griffin Newman. He's like, he plays Arthur on the Tick, Amazon's Tick.
Okay, because I was going to say, Arthur on the Tick was originally
who was he?
Mickey Dolenz was the voice of Arthur on the Tick.
Oh my god!
In the original one, so I was going to say,
what
like, man, Mickey Dolenz is in it.
Yeah,
like the redesigns are just, they're slight redesign, like and again, sort of in tune with the early 2000s one, where they kind of, you know, bulk, like make they elongate everybody and give them like big shoulders and stuff.
It's the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
If Gwildor shows up in this fucking series, I don't care. It's like the best thing that's ever. I'm like, they're like, what was the greatest thing you've ever seen? I'm like, Masters of the Universe Revelations. If an animated Gwildor shows up, I don't know if he was in that one from the early 2000s. The Cosmic Key.
Yeah, I did like, I'd like to check it out again. Like that one was kind of interesting because it was Mattel had like no interest in these characters or reviving them when that early 2000s, like they were done. You know, it's like, okay, it came and went. You know, like these companies, they kind of, like, it's, you know, kind of cynical. They just kind of like you know, they get all these kids. They pull out every like dirty trick in the book to get like kids, as many kids as possible, to like fall in love with these characters they create, and then as soon as like the profit margin starts to dip to a certain point, it's like, boom, we're done.
Ya.
Yeah, see ya. And then we're like, what happens next?
There's some pictures like I was at the Children's Palace when He-Man and Skeletor were there. Like, that's where we got that poster from in the in our Masters of the Universe Part 1 episode.
Right.
That was a huge deal. It's like, and when I was little, I'm like, I can't believe He-Man and Skeletor are at the store.
Yeah, and like so to Mattel, it's just not worth like if you can't bring me this many like million worth of sales, then I'm not getting out of bed, like that kind of thing. But the fans are kind of, so like when that early 2000s one was like a bunch of fans who were now like artists, sculptors, and writers and things, like they wanted to like bring it back, and so they kind of like pitched Mattel about bringing it back with them like producing it. So then that's how that happened.
And like there's some characters pop up too, like Scareglow. He was like a figure for me that I always wanted and never had. Like, I was obsessed with anything that glows in the dark.
Yeah, it was Scareglow, and like they referred to him as the ghost of Skeletor. So again, it like implies a lot of story that we never got to see. So it's like, okay, I guess Skeletor died. I guess Skeletor was alive to begin. Like, he wasn't some kind of like zombie or demon or whatever to begin with. He dies, and then he has a ghost, and it's Scareglow. But then it's kind of like, oh wait, okay, he's the ghost of Scareglow. So maybe he's this ghost that works, or he's the ghost of Skeletor. Maybe he's this ghost that works for Skeletor. Like, you can, you can play with the meaning of those names. But in this, it's kind of like, they find different like touchstones for the various parts. So it's like Lord of the Rings is a big part. So like like they go into like sub-Eternia or whatever, like the Eternian underground, the kind of like the dungeon. Like the Dungeons and Dragons, like mega dungeon of Eternia, and they go in, and so it's all like Lord of the Rings kind of references, staircases into the dark, and then even that like door, like it's like the identical like sort of runish door, and then
some drums down in the deep.
Yeah, and so Scareglow is kind of like what's it called, like what's his name? Aragorn, kind of is like in front of all those like ghosts, and then kind of tries to encourage them to like join him, and the Oathbreakers, I think they were called. And so Scareglow is kind of like filling in that role.
The we saw Stinkor again.
Yes, Stinkor. Like, you knew that scene when they're digging around the garbage, like, oh, this really stinks. You knew he was showing.
Bunch of skunks running around here.
And yeah, Stinkor, like, a few years back, me and Gerard Way were talking about, like, we had done some stuff at DC Comics. He had like this whole like line, this sort of sub imprint, this like imprint within DC called Young Animal, and that's where I did Superpowers. But we kind of talked about doing like some different things, and so we were talking about doing like a Masters of the Universe thing. So we were kind of like bouncing ideas back and forth, and it's like, we kind of wanted to do this like big sort of mega like where we just kind of like I was talking, like where we just kind of like reinvent the whole shebang.
Oh my god!
But it's like Gerard is kind of like smart enough, like knows that knows how to like get things sort of approved and whatever, and like he said, like it would probably be a lot easier to get the approval if we just kind of focus on one character, like instead of trying to do the whole thing, focus on one character. And he was saying, like, he always that he said that like Stinkor seemed to like stand out to him, and like Stinkor that's not somebody I would have picked. It's kind of like, but like once he suggested that, it was like, oh yeah, that like he does kind of like he's got this great visual, like this black and white, this like really strong contrast. He's just kind of like visual, and then all this orange.
That like I love his armor.
Yeah, it
pops.
It was a pretty inspired choice, and again, like I said, not wouldn't have been my first thought, but it's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Like Stinkor would be a perfect guy to kind of focus on, because he's just like kind of so weird. Like, I think what kind of like would keep me from coming up with like Stinkor as one is that like Stinkor, like I want to like just from when I was a kid and stuff, like I want to believe in the reality of this world, of this sort of like absurd Masters of the Universe world. I want to believe in it. And like there's a couple characters like Stinkor that kind of like draw your attention to just how absurd this whole operation is.
There's another one that I put Stinkor adjacent that I'm also obsessed with. Spikor.
Yeah, like there's just some ones, that are
purple,
like
the purple and like his weird
hand. Like what are we doing here? Like what's going on? I mean, Orko I think is one too. Like,
yes.
My thoughts of like rebooting He-Man or whatever, I would be very tempted to leave Orko out. But I kind of realized like Orko is like he's kind of an essential ingredient, and yeah, like Stinkor, it's like, if you take this stuff real seriously and you want to buy into it, yeah, like Orko makes it a challenge, Stinkor makes it a challenge, but like there, that in itself is like just a really good argument for how great they are. Like that they're just kind of like they're singular and like they're interesting, and again, strong colors.
I love the colors.
Like really, really intense colors.
The of course, I also love Triclops too. I love his green and his eyes. I think they're like red in there, and of course, under his helmet is Henry Rollins.
Yeah, and they kind of like I thought this was kind of like an interesting thing they came up with for this show, where it's like, He-Man is kind of like it's sorcery and super science, and so like it's kind of like those two things are at odds with each other in this. Like it seems like the day of sorcery is coming to an end, and like sort of super science is taking over, and it's kind of this like this sort of like digital kind of like the singularity or whatever is happening. Yeah, like and Triclops is kind of like the representative of that.
The cult leader, he like makes them drink that like weird chalice, and they become like it's like I'm half man, half cyborg, like the computer lady in Superman 3.
Yeah, and the board or whatever, and what were they calling them? They had a name for them that was like the motherboard. The motherboard, which made me think of like Jack Kirby with Mother Box, but motherboard. That's that's an '80s computer term. You could imagine them coming up with that in the old series. And again, like '80s, like the credits sequence. And stuff, it is '80s nostalgia is a definite element.
Like a
Roboto they tried to get Anthony Daniels to play Roboto.
You got Justin Long as Roboto.
Yeah,
I love his voice. It's great because it sounds like I don't know what effect they're using, but they're like you have to do your dialogue into this Campbell's soup can.
Right? Yeah.
He's like, and then he was this canon too, where he was like, Man-at-Arms downloaded his mind into Roboto. Is that a thing? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, like again, anything, like, it sounds right. You know, like when they said it, I felt like, I think I've seen that before. Like that was...
Anakin built C-3PO.
Right, yeah.
And Man-at-Arms put his brain into Roboto. Mm-hmm. He's like, I am you.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
the one thing that I am sad about is I can't grow a mustache.
Thinking about like the He-Man cartoon was like again, it wasn't what it was, very kid oriented. It was not what I was looking for. But like the commercials were like so badass. Like the Roboto commercial is so great, and it's like it's got this like these like stingers like wow.
Oh, yes,
like Roboto, and he's like in silhouette, and it's like heavy metal kind of music going, and he's got his axe. And he's got his buzzsaw, and he's got and he's like Roboto,
yes,
and
we also we get hyped over the Manny Faces commercial where the kid freaks his dad the fuck out. He's like trying to work out on the exercise bike.
Yeah, he's like terrified of Manny Faces when his face, But yeah, like for some reason, like the TV ads were still hitting that kind of like.
I love that, Steve.
Yeah, like I like that Roboto. Like I wanted I wanted that. I wanted this, this like, T-1000 kind of like Roboto. But then in the show, he is just kind of hello, as me, like in the old '80s. And then in this, they give him kind of like a C-3PO kind of thing.
It's my friend, R2. I mean Orko.
Orko, Deco, and they even have like the Lord of the Rings kind of thing where like Orko is doing like you shall not pass.
Oh, I love it.
The Scareglow and
you got the cultist Triclops.
Yeah, again, like when I got to the final episode and it was over, like and then like it started up like like the new Transformers show or whatever, and I was like, wait, what's going on? I didn't realize it was only going to be 5 episodes. Like, I mean, the story does come full circle, and it's got like a nice arc to it. But I don't know. I thought it was going to be like I thought it would be like 8 episodes, 10 episodes.
Are they doing one of those moves where it's like
half seasons or something? Could
maybe.
be, yeah. To me, I just thought like everything you hear about these streaming services is that they're just getting like real like gun shy and skittish now and not giving things so I thought like did they just not have enough faith in like a He-Man reboot, who knows, to only give it 5 episodes, or I mean
they're like somehow, you know what, I don't know how I meant is that Whiplash?
Whiplash, again, like you get like some pretty cool moments for like all your favorites, and I liked what they did with Faker, and they did fake you out, it's like, oh, there's He-Man, and it's like we were at the Natural History Museum, and they had these like skeletons wearing like different helmets and things, and Skeletor, it's Skeletor, like I said, great. A lot of the stuff that like I did, because I think I was like probably in like 1st grade when like the show came out.
After I saw something that's like the Kevin Smith hosted Masters of the Universe Revelations after show. They have one. This is the official like the Total Recall show right now. Weird.
I didn't see the after show on here. I would have liked to have checked it out.
Yeah,
I'll check it out at some point. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Because I would like to know some of the thoughts behind. Like again, like I said, I think they were, they did this, pretty smart. They were pretty smart about it.
There was a character waiting outside of a doorway in here. He was going, Berserker. My love for you like ticking for Berserk.
It still kind of surprises me that we still haven't gotten like another live action Masters of the Universe thing since the Canon. Like it's pretty shocking, and like like whenever I see the Thor movies, like I know Thor has been around for like thousands of years or whatever, and then the Marvel Thor has been around since the 60s, but it's like these like Thor movies so feel like Masters of the Universe.
Oh yeah,
and like and Masters of the Universe had the head start. It wasn't until like the 2000s that you started seeing some Thor movies. So like they it was their game to lose, and they lost it.
What's the hashtag that needs to be developed to get Dolph Lundgren's ass in gear to get this going?
Yeah, exactly. Because because then you have like Dolph Lundgren as King Randor. Like
is Frank Langella still alive?
I don't know. Yeah, I think he is.
He's like, yield to my power.
I mean, you get you get Mark Hamill to play like the live action Skeletor. But yeah, Frank Langella would be good. Although he'd probably like the people involved in the Canon one would probably not want to do it. Because like I know like Frank Langella was like kind of like this, like he was looking forward to it. He put a ton of sweat equity into, like he was really into it, and then he just kind of saw the thing flop, and he said he did it to kind of like impress his son, and at the premiere he looked over at his son, and his son was asleep watching the movie.
Oh, no. I'm glad it exists.
Yeah,
and I'm
into it. I'm into it. I was like a lot more into it than I thought I would be. Like I said, I was a little disappointed they didn't go for like a full reinvention like Thundercats or like She-Ra, but like it they chose a path, and I thought they came out with a pretty solid, like I like it way more than I like an old episode of the '80s show.
Yeah. And now I'm going to go back to revisit the early 2000s one. If
Now, I check out the early 2000s one, and I'd like to see like some of the last episodes of the 80s one, because I don't like there's sometimes towards the end of these like 80s cartoons, it's like you're getting a little too old to watch it, so you stop watching it, so you miss the last couple.
Yeah, me too.
But then like the last couple is sometimes like when they get really weird. Like I watched Transformers all the way to the end, the cartoon series, and it gets weird and it gets really interesting towards the end. It after the '80s movie, it like flashes forward into the future world of like 2005, I think it is, or 2015 maybe, and then and like it becomes like space opera, and then you have the headmasters are like the final like couple episodes are like the headmasters. So like I'm curious what the last couple, like whether Pre-Eternia does like show up or get hinted at or whatever.
The headmasters are some of my favorite like Transformer moments. So I'm all in on on the headmasters.
Yeah, I mean I do like, I even remember, like I was there for. Yeah, it's weird. I don't really remember the last couple seasons of like the He-Man series, but I do remember checking out the New Adventures of He-Man. Like I was like the Canon film came out and it bombed or was like a disappointment or whatever, and like and I know like on the documentaries and stuff they say like, oh, they got it all wrong, they didn't do by the power, like they they changed everything, but like as a kid I loved it, and I felt like everything they changed was an improvement. I liked Gwildor better than Orko. I liked the new costume that they came up with them. I felt like, okay, we're going in the right direction. And then like this is getting more to my liking. This we're getting away from this cartoon show. And then the New Adventures of He-Man was like that too. Like the intro credits for the New Adventures of He-Man was like great, some like just really great animation and stuff, and it's like, yeah, this is a cool direction too. And then that thing bombed also. So
when I was little, a lot of the play we did outside, for some reason, I just thinking back, it was inspired by the Canon He-Man. I remember playing as He-Man.
I used to draw that and I remember the build up to it. I remember like reading like Masters of the Universe magazine and seeing like the new costume and stuff, and like I would draw I would try to draw and then try to draw things in that style. Like it was like Mobius, I think, designed like the costume, and it just looked like super cool, and like a little more like Sword and Sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons, Frank Frazetta, like a little more in that direct, which is like what initially appealed to me about the toys when they first came out.
Dude, we were already in Masters of the Universe-ville once. I'm glad we got to get back to it.
Yeah, this was a good reason to do it. Also, like this show does like a trope that I'm not a fan of, but I understand it's like a very popular trope and something that pops up. But like when I make something, I try to avoid this trope, and like I tend not to enjoy it. But the trope of like you have like the good guys and the bad guys, and they decide to join forces.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about because when
like it's such a popular thing. It is like it makes like fans are kind of like, oh, this it feels like you're in new territory.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I saw when Evil-Lyn's running around there, I was like blinking, and then it was the Baroness, and then I blinked again. Yeah. It was like flashing in and out. I'm like,
yeah, because it is like it again, and I think we talked about it in the Snake Eyes episode, where it's like to me it kind of like belittles the sort of like real, like what you've set up as like the real rivalry between these two factions, that like there's this really stark difference, and they are like mortal enemies. So to have them kind of like be like, oh, let's put that aside and shake hands, like it just feels like it kind of like makes it diminishes sort of like everything that sort of came before it. That's just my opinion, and I know it is like people do get excited when they see like the good guys and the bad guys team up and if you really do it right, like I think there's a really good way you can do it, where like it's this like extremely tenuous alliance that's like constantly being poked at and like looking for ways to like, you know, fuck each other over and stuff. And it's like, but usually it's not played that way. Usually it's like, okay, we'll put us in, we'll be buddies, and then they team up. Now, again, like I see the appeal of it, and also like in sort of like a genre deconstruction, you have this, you know, this thing of like He-Man, this world or whatever that's like very like male centered and again very like cynically constructed to sell toys and things, and very like macho and this and that. And so like it is like you can sort of do a deconstruction of it, and maybe it is good to kind of like, you know, point to how absurd, you know, He-Man's clash is with Skeletor, and also so it's like you take this sort of like male fantasy and you remove like the male fantasy element, and then sort of like all the women in the story and like they get to kind of like, you know, shine and kind of like bring like a different perspective and kind of like, you know, deflate some of the, you know, absurdity of like the larger thing of kind of like, you know, what were we doing, you know, sort of following these two guys around and like, you know,
Skeletor's like, I can't remember why I was mad at you in the first place,
yeah.
He-Man.
You know, He-Man, you're not so bad after all. Like, yeah, especially like in this kind of like fantasy world where it's like Skeletor, you know, looks like he's just like a demon from hell or something, you know, and then He-Man is like this, you know, sword wielding kind of like, you know, like I think of him in a Conan kind of where like, you know, he'll kill you just as soon as look at you, and so it's kind of funny to be like, oh yeah, you know, let's put aside our differences. Yeah, you demon from hell and me this you know, sword wielding Avenger. Well,
he's like Evil-Lyn and it's like Riggs. You said before, like Riggs and Murtaugh. It's like Evil-Lyn and Orko, the buddy movie you never knew you.
Yeah. I mean, at least it wasn't like He-Man and Skeletor teaming up. But again, that would, like in the old '80s show, that would occasionally happen.
I forgive you, He-Man.
I mean, I might as well go into it a little bit, but just sort of talk about like, so like, you know, so like when this sort of like idea of like me and Gerard Way doing a Masters of the Universe, when this was sort of like alive as like a possibility, like I usually do, I kind of like, you know, just you know, went off into my corner and just kind of like, you know, played around, came up with, you know, as much stuff as I could, and just kind of like, you know, tinkered around and then like the thing didn't end up happening. Like you know, it didn't. It got a little like it was kind of like Gerard Way was like, okay, they approved the idea of like me doing a Masters of the Universe thing. Now I just have to convince them to let me bring you aboard. Because again, like, but so like, you know, I kind of went off in my corner and just kind of like picked away and you know, played around with this thing and, you know, came up with like some ideas which again like never got used. So I just kind of like quick rundown of just some different things I was kind of like toying with the idea of. Again, I was toying with the idea of like no Orko, no Prince Adam, but then I was also kind of like, yeah, they're kind of important ingredients. So I tried like, I kind of took Orko and I kind of like thought about like what informed the creation of Orko. So I started thinking about like Vaughn Bodie and like Cheech Wizard, and so I was kind of like bringing in a little of that for Orko, and then for like Prince Adam, I came up with this idea of like, because like one of the things I kind of found out, which I don't think was terribly like apparent in the cartoon, but like is part of like the lore, part of like the comics and stuff, was that Prince Adam's mom, like the queen, you know, there's like King Randor, and then I don't even remember what the queen's name is.
I can't remember.
But that she was from Earth, so Prince Adam is half Eternian, half Earthling, and that she was an astronaut, and she went into space, and then like lands on Eternia, meets King Randor, they fall in love, like
no, it's just so fucking good.
Yeah.
Why, you idiots out there?
I didn't invent this. This was part of the lore. So this is like part of the backstory. And so I started thinking about that aspect of it.
That's great.
So I started thinking about that aspect, and I thought and I was kind of thinking of like A Wrinkle in Time, like how it's like these kids, their dad is like a physicist or whatever, and then he disappears, and then they have to like go find what happened. So I thought okay, how about Adam grows up on Earth, and when he was a little kid, his mom, is an astronaut. She goes into space and then presumably died. They don't know what happened to her. And maybe set it in the 80s, and maybe a Challenger explosion style, like a fictionalized version of that, but that his mom goes into space, and that as a kid he comes up with this fantasy, he has this idea in his head that of course my mom didn't die. Everybody's telling me, but I know my mom didn't die. She went into space, then she landed on this planet, this magical planet, and she blah blah blah, and so he decides he's going to become an astronaut too when he grows up, and he's going to go into space and follow his mom.
Yes.
But again, Christ. It's like a kid's fantasy. It's like this coping mechanism. It can't possibly be true. And as he grows up, he does follow in his mom's footsteps. He does become an astronaut, and he does get on, and he kind of convinces himself that that fantasy that I had as a kid, that I no longer cling to that. Of course, I am following in my mom's footsteps. She was an astronaut. She died doing it, but she was a national hero. But I want to do it. I want to do it too. I want to sort of continue her mission. Just the normal stuff.
Great.
But that child's idea that he had, that child's fantasy that he was going to find his mom, that his mom is still alive, actually is more. It's that dream is sort of more alive for him than he would admit to himself, or definitely admit to others. But anyway, so he gets to go into space, and then just like his mom, whatever vortex or whatever she went into that goes to Eternia, he ends up in Eternia, and so he he reunites with his mom. He finds his mom, and so King Randor is not his dad. King Randor, in my version. So there's a little more of kind of a distrust or a natural antagonism between him and King Randor, because it's hey, you're not my dad. I have a dad, and you're not he's his stepdad or what. So then it facilitates it, makes more necessary a sort of possibly keeping the He-Man thing a secret or whatever, because he's got this rotten stepfather that he hates, and he hates
yes!
Whatever. But he finds his mom, and it's this beautiful reunion and stuff. And then but that and again, these are just ideas I was playing with, and I hadn't fully worked out how they'd play out or whatever.
Fucking great.
Oh, thanks. Okay, I felt that was a good entrance into the story.
It's fucking great. Jesus.
To kind of get you from the world that we know into this other world. And it also I was thinking of A Wrinkle in Time, but I was also thinking of I was always kind of fascinated by the second Planet of the Apes movie, where it's this other astronaut gets in a spaceship and he wants to find what happened to Taylor, and then he ends up I was kind of thinking of that too. So this guy Adam, or maybe his name isn't even Adam. Maybe he's got some other name, and then he gets there and he finds out that his mom has had a kid with this King Randor, and his name's Adam or whatever. And so then when this astronaut becomes He-Man, finds the He-Man armor, or he finds the dying He-Man, or what that maybe He-Man is this but that there's this prophesized hero called He-Man, and so maybe there was a previous He-Man, maybe there wasn't, but this guy from Earth who may or may not be named Adam, again, haven't decided, but he comes and then he finds this armor, puts it on, it bulks him up, he becomes He-Man, so anyway, a million sort of ideas.
I need to get I gotta read that. I want to read this so bad. Why didn't you guys make?
Well, I mean, we didn't even get close to that. This is stuff I didn't even tell Gerard about. This was just kind of again, when somebody, when John Barber said to me, okay, would you like to do a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover? I don't know if it's going to happen yet, but maybe don't do any work on it yet. Maybe, like, of course, I immediately started working. So it was kind of like that. It was like me and Gerard were talking about like maybe doing a He-Man thing.
I just mean like the folks that didn't give it the stamp. Like I've been like, give me 2 stamps. Right, the 80s too. Like, oh my god. And then,
like he grows, like he's a kid in the 80s. He grows up, becomes an astronaut, comes to this planet, sees his mom, and then finds out about this like prophesized hero, He-Man, and then ends up becoming him. And
this is brilliant.
And he's keeping it a secret from his stepfather, who he's not completely, he doesn't completely trust. And then I was also thinking like, okay, like the Prince Adam idea like never appealed to me, but I've kind of figured out a way to make it organic to this, make it interesting. And so I also thought like, what if there's like other Prince Adam, like okay, so I thought like, what if Skeletor has like a Prince Adam, where it's like Skeletor, because there was like this character called like Eldor or Keldor or whatever, who was a wizard in like Pre-Eternia or something, and they hinted that he was gonna possibly become Skeletor, but he starts out as this wizard. So I thought like that Skeletor has this sort of like old man that he turns into, that kind of is this like sort of unassuming old man kind of wizard, sort of modeled after like the guy who invented Skeletor. Like if you've ever seen him in any of the documentaries, he's kind of like bald, has this like white beard. So I was thinking like modeling him after that. Also thinking of like the dad from the Masters of the Universe handheld video game commercial. The dad who like in the commercial, it turns out their dad is Skeletor and they kill their dad.
I remember talking.
Look, I still haven't found that commercial like on YouTube. If anybody's seen that commercial, like send it our way, because I haven't been able to find it. But I swear that was the commercial when I was a kid. It was like this kid's playing the Masters of the Universe game, and then his dad's there, or maybe it's supposed to be his stepdad or something. But he's like bald, he has a goatee, and he's playing. And then like he defeats Skeletor in the game, and then his dad disappears. Like he killed his dad. Yeah.
Skeletor was like, meet my son, Skeletor Junior. You call him Junior.
I swear I'm not making this up, but maybe we'll see. Like I'd like to see it just for some proof.
Tom, I wish I could hold it in my hands. Your
thanks.
Your
yeah, I mean, again, like I've been wanting to do like a Masters of the Universe thing like forever. Like from the very beginning of like getting into doing comics and stuff. Like I had it in my head of like, man, I'd like to do like a Masters of the Universe, and it just never happened, for one reason or another. And like working on something like American Barbarian helped scratch that itch. Because it was kind of like I was doing sort of like Thunder the Barbarian, Masters of the Universe, like that Conan, just that whole like barbarian craze of like the early '80s, the sci-fi barbarian. So I got to scratch that itch with American Barbarian, but like I've always wanted to like do like like He-Man. But again, it's like maybe I shouldn't, like even like after all was said and done, like Gerard was kind of like he was like, you want to do your own thing, like it's not even worth your time to do like a Masters of the Universe, like just do your own do another American Barbarian, or do like your own Barbarian.
American Barbarian is dope as hell,
which I think is like, that is real solid advice, and it is good. But again, it's like the fan in me is like, oh man, to do like a He-Man thing, And again, like that reinvention of Prince Adam. Like, I mean, I could do a comic or whatever of like my own characters, where it's like a guy whose mom was an astronaut, blah blah blah, and it would have like no relation to Masters of the Universe. I could do that story, figure that story out, make it into something. But again, it would be so much fun to do that and have like Prince Adam and He-Man and Orko and all that. But anyway, like I don't even know if I'm going to leave this in the episode. But like
I'm glad that you have it on the.
Yeah, it's on the record. It's in and again it's like a lot of backseat driving. A lot of the people complaining about this like new He-Man cartoon, it's a lot of backseat driving. It's like, oh well, I would have done this, and I would have done that. And again, I'm a backseat driver too. Like I would do something different. Like again, I appreciate what they did, and hats off to them, and I think they pulled it off and made something really cool. But again, like I am a backseat driver. Yeah. I would do this. Like that's how I look at everything.
That story that you just told me is out of control awesome.
Yeah, I've been sitting on it for a while, and like on my Patreon and stuff, I've been like putting up a little bit here and there. So like just when this show was coming out, I thought like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to share like a little bit of my He-Man stuff. So I had like old man He-Man and stuff, sitting on sitting on that orange throne from Castle Grayskull with like that carpet, that like amazing trapdoor carpet and stuff.
No, thanks for sharing it. It was so awesome to hear that story.
Thanks for listening.
That's great. Like, man, Tom, excited about hearing your He-Man's comic story.
Yeah, that was like that would be like the entry into. Of course, I'd like have a million little bits and pieces and kind of like go down the list and like figure out like okay, what would be a cool way to do this character? What would be a cool way to do that? But that was like the way in. The way in was like, like how do I get you from like the world we live in to Eternia? And that was like the way.
There's a vehicle, or it's like that figure carrying like long skeleton thing that you put all the guys in. I'd like to see that like show up. I mean,
that wasn't in here. That giant
bone thing.
Yeah, Bonosaur or whatever it was called.
The Fright Zone.
I love those commercials. Those commercials, like the world of those commercials was so much cooler than the cartoon.
The Fright Zone. The Fright Zone.
Roboto. Oh, there was another. Modulok.
Skeletor comes out of the bathroom. He's like,
"Don't go in there. It's the Fright Zone." The slime pit. I turned the toilet into a slime pit.
Yeah, like they were. Those commercials were so metal, and then the cartoon was so I don't know, John Denver. It was not metal. It was not metal.
Welcome to the slime pit.
And like the slime pit, like the slime would like brainwash you, so you're just kind of like woozy from.
I turned the Don't go in there. I had a light case of food poisoning.
Like in like the documentaries about Masters of the Universe, they talk about like how great all these like decisions were that they made in the making of like the cartoon, and like they were all decisions, but they were like saying like, yeah, everybody thinks they want like like a Skeletor who's like the master of darkness, like this and has glowing eyes, but you don't really want that. Like this sort of campy Skeletor is like more fun and stuff, and like. I call bullshit. Like I want the like fully satanic.
Oh yeah, we were
Skeletor.
Like I love the camp Skeletor, but a fully satanic Skeletor would be dope too. Remember we were talking about Satanic Panic?
Yeah, because this was the era of the Satanic Panic that the 80s He-Man came out of, and it was like, oh, this stuff's Satan. But like they should have leaned into it. Mm-hmm. They should have gone like full instead of backing away from it.
I've got my Skeletor and like the Hordak, and I've got 2 like black candles I'm lighting. I'm like, what is he doing in there? Oh my god. Get him to the priest.
Perform an exorcism on young Matt. I like what they did with Merman, having his little, the scourge of the 7 seas, bringing some...
Innsmouth creepers?
Yeah, and combining that with some Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then you got Merman with his... he never had the little eye scar.
Yeah.
Should have a patch over that.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Here comes bearded Man-at-Arms.
Yeah, it's like, take me back to you got your Visionaries, your Man-at-Arms, mustachioed action figures, like...
Yeah, like I always want... Because, like, the Man-at-Arms action figure did not have a mustache. So then, like, when they had the show and he had a mustache, I was kind of, that's an interesting choice.
Really?
But then, the toy never had a mustache, but, like...
Now that is, what's that called? Is that
Mandela
That
effect,
is a real Mandela effect.
Well, because they've made
shit,
new He-Man toys modeled and like made to look like the old toys and have given him a mustache, but the toy never had a mustache. But he had a very puffy upper lip.
He did.
So I don't know if like the mustache was something they weren't sure about. They just decided not to paint it on.
They got cold feet.
Yeah, they got cold feet. Decided not to paint it on at the end.
Yeah, because in the cartoon, Man-at-Arms comes out of like, it's like Beverly Hills now, and he's got like a little injection. He's getting, he's like, Man-at-Arms, are you getting Botox again?
They like. Man-at-Arms, the toy, always looked to me like Moe from the Three Stooges. He kind of has like Moe's face, And then he had like the bowl haircut,
Dude.
Like the helmet's kind of like the Moe bowl haircut.
It's a repurposed Moe figure because you just paint the helmet black and there's his.
It's Moe.
He's like, what are we gonna do with all these Shem Howard?
Yeah, we'll have to do that in post. See what that
Holy shit.
action figure looks like.
Tom,
There he is.
great
Yeah,
work.
it's Moe.
Wow.
Yeah, just like the rumor was always that like the He-Man line was like a repurposed Conan, like Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan line that they ended up not doing and made into their own thing. Like that was a rumor. I don't know that was true, but yeah, like it was also going to be a Three Stooges line.
Wow,
Hey,
it's
Moe.
like it shows Man-at-Arm's head. It's like it like fades into Moe.
Yeah, separated
Wise
at birth.
guy.
Oh, wise guy. Masters of the Universe, Revelation, enjoyed it. Pretty cool.
We still. I know we thought we wrapped this up last time. I have the power.
Yeah, I have the power.
Well, I have the power.
And what would I have the honor of Greyskull, like She-Ra.
I have the acquaintance of Greyskull.
So the Greyskull Honor Society.
The Greyskull. The Greyskull and Bones is it's a secret He-Man society at Yale.
Some of the He-Man figures in the '80s started coming with this. They came with this ring. This like ring that it looked like it had like Castle Greyskull's face on it, like or the ghost of Greyskull. This ring, but it was like kind of like a very scary looking ring. And I know like that the Satanic Panic going on that prevented me from getting what was it, Trapjaw. I wanted to get Trapjaw, but I think my dad saw that ring and heard about the Satanic Panic regarding He-Man, so he's like, no, I don't want you to get that. It's and he did. I mean, he did reference like he said it looks satanic to me. It's like okay,
666.
But on that note, I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby: The Epic Life of the King of Comics. Fantastic Four Grand Design, Transformers versus G.I. Joe. I was this close to being, the author or co-author of a He-Man or a Stinkor miniseries with Gerard Way.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
Check out my Patreon. Go to patreon.com, search Tom Scioli, and you'll see, a couple of my, you'll see like the comics that I've been working on, but you'll also see a couple of my little He-Man doodles that were part of this idea. I was sort of like these ideas I was working through, in the event that DC Comics said, okay, well, let's do that He-Man and get working, sharpen your pencils, Tom. We're ready to go. Oh, and follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
And follow me on Instagram at Tom_Scioli. We'll see you next time for our third He-Man episode.
I cannot wait.
We'll have to figure out some excuse when they come up with the live action one. That's what I'm holding out for. And I think like a live action He-Man could stand shoulder to shoulder with anything else. I don't know. I maybe we'll never see it. Maybe it's it's too much of an ask after like Snake Eyes flopping at the box office or whatever.
We're gonna go over the Canon Masters of the Universe with a fine tooth.
Yeah, that would be good to go back over that one. Just completely devoted to that one. But yeah, see you next time.
See you next time.